And when stars are in light, the weeper, we would know.
You just can't help but dance when that music is playing.
I love it.
Hello everyone. Welcome to the show. Welcome to the Improving Sales Performance live cast. Before we went live, we were joking. We were sharing with Chad, our producer Shay, and we were all talking. I was saying that, during the intro, when the music plays, I just can't help it. And Chad's like looking at me like I'm crazy. And then sure enough, the music, you can't help it. It just happened. Welcome everyone. Welcome to the show. Let's get right to it. We're really excited. Last week when I mentioned that we were going to have you on, Chad, and that you were going to you were going to teach us, you were going to school us on how to do better remote meetings and remote interaction and build better connections. There was just a lot of positive reaction to that, lots of emails and texts. So I know there's an appetite for this stuff. Let me do a proper introduction, and then we'll jump right in and start asking some questions. So Chad is the co-founder and chief experience officer at andMe Incorporated, and Shay can put up all of his contact information. Will be up on the banners underneath. It's an organization whose mission is to create conversations that matter. I absolutely love that mission. That's so clear what you guys do. Leaders call Chad when they want to amplify connection, belonging, and trust in their organizations. Forbes calls Chad a global expert on asking questions that build trust and connections in teams. He's a TEDx speaker, author of The Pocket Guide to Facilitating Human Connections, and the creator of the We Connect cards, which is very cool. And I'm certain that we're going to hear about that, or you can mention that, which are now being used to create conversations that matter on campuses and at companies in over 80 countries around the world. Congratulations on that. Most recently, Chad and his partner, Will Wise, launched their new book, Ask Powerful Questions, Create Conversations That Matter, which is now a #1 Amazon bestseller. So congratulations. That's absolutely fantastic. I love it. Welcome to the show.
And I'm glad this is getting recorded so I can send that little clip to my mom. So that she
know it. Moms are the best. That's why you do this stuff.
It's good to be on with you. And we didn't chat about this pre-show, but I have an invite. I always like to front load value, right? If I've tuned into a live stream and I want to see, like, if my Wi-Fi cuts out right now, what's something that I can get and take away? And so one little tip in thinking about virtual engagement, oftentimes when I'm working with a group remotely, I invite them to chat while I'm chatting. Meaning if we're on Zoom, right, we have the ability virtually to somewhat politely talk while someone else is talking, which we can't do in person. And so for anybody who's tuning in, as you tune in, just an invite, feel free to ask and comment as we go along, with the chance that Matt or Shay pop up one of those questions and we can dive down one of those rabbit holes. And if you don't choose to, just feel free to take that idea, chat while I'm chatting, and keep it going. Cool.
I love that. In fact, I know that there are a lot of people watching live right now. If you want, just we can practice. Why don't you chat? Put something in the chat box. Tell us where are you watching from? That'd be a good one. That's an easy one. Everyone knows where they are, and so where are you watching from? We'll start with there. And chat while I'm chatting is great.
And where are you watching from? And you've invited somebody who cares a lot about asking questions and the questions we ask here. And so I will add one question to that. Feel free in the comments to drop your answer to this question, which is, what is one of your favorite topics of conversation? Maybe a little bit of connection before content as we get going.
Yeah, I love that. All right, so let's jump in. Tell us about We and Me. What is it? Why did you create it? Why? Give us the scoop.
Yeah, so I'll share for context sake, but the idea, I'm going to try to share this in a way that will add value if you're listening about it, not just from an informational standpoint of like, aha, like that's the origin of We and Me, but also from a standpoint of how you might build and create something yourself. So if rewinding back to when I was about this tall, I had seen a movie, Patch Adams with Robin Williams.
Yes.
And so if you ever, you obviously have seen that movie, Matt. And when I saw that movie, I had my whole life figured out. I was going to be Patch Adams. And in the movie, Robin Williams, becomes this doctor to really promote the quality of life over quantity. And so I had path figured out. I was thinking pre-med, medical school, maybe pediatrician, but like I was going to be Patch, because in the movie, I was so struck by the way that he was able to reach the unreachable, right? And get people who were even the smartest, best clinicians couldn't get them to eat, get these patients to eat in the hospital. But he was able to, and he really healed people through connection. And so I was so enamored with that. And then I took a chemistry class in college and was like, whoo, this is not going to work out very well. But the aha there that started this pivot, which is, we live in this culture where there's like, find what you're passionate about, do what you're passionate about. And that's not very actionable. What is a little bit more actionable is think about what is like the constant stream of all the things you've ever done and been good at and that have filled you with a little bit of life. And that's probably pretty close to what you're passionate about. And so for me, reflecting on that, like I realized I wasn't passionate about the scalpel, but I was passionate about the connection part of that. And so that led me into, background in interpersonal psychology and experiential learning design. But right now, about 70% of the revenue from We and Me, which I consider a practice more than a business intentionally, and I would differentiate those in a couple ways. But about 70% of revenue is me actually working with companies, organizations, universities, helping teach them how to make virtual engagement easy, especially after COVID. I was doing that with all remote teams before COVID, a whole bunch, but especially post-COVID. And then also the frameworks around Ask Powerful Questions and those books. But how do we create conversations that matter? And my co-founder, Will, giving a keynote one time, misspoke and the subtitle of the book and said conversations that create matter. And I love that, because really good conversations actually, like, they make a difference. Whether they, in a sales context, they actually lead to you working or collaborating with somebody together, or having that sale happen, or something actually changes. There's and at the risk of ranting, there's a quote from one of my favorite poets, David White, who says, "No self survives a conversation." And so that I would say that Matt, you and I are going to die during this live stream. And then we're going to click end call with a slightly more nuanced, wise version of ourselves, because we're going to learn
different version. Yeah, we're going to be better because of it. That's for sure.
Yeah.
All right.
So that's a little snippet. And then the other half you mentioned in terms of context is we create these tools as well, right? So you mentioned the We Connect cards. By the end of the day, my desk always becomes a mess. Created another deck, We Engage cards, but the whole intention of this box is to help leaders and educators and events amplify connection, belonging, and trust. And so there's a ton of really active group exercises to do that. Some other strategies, practices as well. And
I know Shay just put up on the screen the we and me /ideas, we.me/ideas, because I know a lot of what you're talking about, people could go there and see some of those things and click on them and get them, and they're available, right?
Yeah, I have this philosophy that information should be free, and so even though I work in an information-based business, information should be free. So I give everything away. I don't hold anything back. I give everything away for free, and then experiences is what I charge for. And so keynoting at the beginning to an annual conference, or facilitating a workshop for a group internally, etc. So that link takes you to the question that I held up earlier, comes from that deck. So there's 60 questions, and you can download a printable version of those and a whole bunch of other free resources. Yeah.
So one of the things that you mentioned is virtual meetings. You work with clients, virtual meetings and virtual teams. That's really a big topic for us right now, as many of our clients, many of the people that will be watching this either now or in the future have traditionally been where they're all in the office, an office environment, and the last year they've been work from home, and moving forward they might be some sort of a hybrid, more likely than not, where they're going to have to build teams remotely, and so we want to talk about that. So what are some of your best practices for running a successful, let's just start with a virtual meeting. What can you share with us?
Love it. Let me, I'm a visual learner, so let me draw this out actually for you so that we can contextualize all this. So imagine, if our context is virtual meeting, and what I want to do is map it out on a timeline. So as if this is the start to your meeting and this is the end to your meeting. What I've found, and this is not like I didn't read a book and think like, oh, this is a good idea, maybe I'll share this with Matt on this live stream. This is through practice. I have and a heap of research boiled down what I share with people into 5 buckets or ingredients for virtual engagement, and they map to the timeline of a particular meeting or gathering. And so one actually happens before the official start time. The other one can happen extremely quickly. It can be as short as 1 sentence, but if you miss it, the rest of this is worthless. And then the third one, you heard me say the phrase really briefly. It's this idea of connection before content. And then for most people in most meetings, the fourth ingredient is going to be 80% of most people's gathering. And so the other 4 ingredients actually are just like sprinkles at the beginning and the end, but they make a huge difference for the way that and this ingredient would be content of the meeting actually happens. And then the fifth and last one we'll get to, but let me rewind and just add some language really quick. And I have videos that go deeper on this, and I can share this, and maybe we can choose to like dive into one that would be particularly relevant for your crew, Matt.
Yeah.
So the first one is this concept that I got from a guy named Mark Collard called the unofficial start. And the concept is typically when we meet virtually or in person, we reward people for being late by waiting around for people to show up. Be like, oh, Bill's not here. Let's give him another second. Maybe he's restarting his computer. Unofficial start says, what if we began a few minutes before the official start time with something immediate and purposefully, immediately engaging, and also tied to the purpose of why we're there. And that runs into or past the official start time by 2 to 3 minutes. So that what you're doing is actually rewarding the people who showed up on time or early, but extending understanding for a couple minutes to the people who needed to restart Wi-Fi or unmute their mic or anything else, right? And so the way that I might do that, I was just leading a workshop yesterday. Where is that question? I think it's lost, but the way I do that sometimes is right as people are coming in, whether I know them really well and they're an intact team or it's a brand new group that I'm meeting for the first time, I just say something to the effect of, hey, I'm really glad y'all are here as an unofficial start as we get rolling here, instead of just saying, what'd you do last weekend, or how are you, or where do you live? What if we asked what has been a highlight of your week so far? Or if you know the group really well and you want to go deep, what is one thing life is teaching you right now? And so you can see how, and what I would typically do is just unofficial start, invite people to, if it's a group of, 6 or more, invite people to answer all in the chat, and then look in the chat and unmute and follow up with some curiosity about something somebody typed. So you can see it's that little method that I just shared is a replacement for the organic connection that we've missed out on for the last year. Right? The organic connection that happens, especially in a sales context, that rapport building where you're able to sit with someone and be humans. Before, when I work with salespeople, I'll often say, like, there's this weird thing if I'm doing like a demo of something where we're like having this great little chat beforehand, but then as soon as like 9 a.m. rolls around, we're like, all business, share the deck, here we are, whatever it is, right? And so that the unofficial start is a really nice way to build that in. I spend a little bit more time on that one. I'll just whip through these next 4 and then let me know what you're finding curious, and maybe we can go down a rabbit hole. Does that work for you?
Yeah. No, I love that.
Okay. Yeah. I had coffee this morning in case you didn't notice. So the second one is this idea of a context hook. And by the way, these are equally relevant.
I have to stop you because I got to put this up on the screen. I think John Henley.
Yeah, hey, John.
One of the unofficial start questions he likes is, if snow fell in flavors, what flavor would you want it to be?
Okay, so I know, John, enough that I can both love that comment and push back on it for a teachable moment for the group. So ideally, the best unofficial starts in my book also start to warm people up or connect them to the purpose of why you're there, which is very different than an icebreaker or pure connection context. And I think this is especially useful in a sales context because if you've ever noticed some resistance to somebody, to wanting to connect with somebody, but knowing that the overall intention, like we're on a sales call in this moment, perhaps right now. And I know we're talking about meeting first, so I'm diverging a little bit here, but that intention. So an unofficial start question, that snow falling in flavors might be a really great if you segue it like this. Okay, so too bad snow can't fall in flavors, but we can choose the flavor of this meeting. And so can you type in the chat, what is one thing you want to accomplish by the end of our time together today?
Love
right,
it.
so like maybe a stretch, but ties it into purpose a little bit more. And that does make a pretty big difference. Cool. So context hook, the idea here is even though everybody clicked the same link to be in the same space, you are not all in the same space. In my mind, you haven't completed teleportation until you do something as a group together to all get into the same context. And so that can happen as quickly as getting really clear about your intention for your time, other-centered intention for your time, and sharing that in one clear sentence. That could be a context hook, or, and we can go back to this one if we want to. There's a handful of other ways to kind of invite everybody to arrive, acknowledging that, somebody was just in a fight with their mom, somebody else is trying to feed their kids spaghetti. Like the context is really all over the place. It's true in person too. All of these apply hybrid, in person, or virtual, but this one is especially important virtually. Next one, connection before content, which I said. And this is simply the idea. We have a tendency, especially if we're a little type A and ambitious and driven, to like, let's get down to it. Or analytical. We're like, no, none of this connection fluff, like we need to get into it. And so connection before content would be more deliberate than the unofficial start. So that might be, hey, before we get rolling, we're going to be talking about X today. We're going to just split out into breakouts real quick. Can you just share everything that you know about X before we even get started down this path, or share some of your concerns for X or what you're excited about for X, something that relates to that topic or purpose in some way, gets everybody to contribute. And that's really important. Switching into this fourth ingredient, like meetings suck if the content wasn't valuable enough to be there. Right. If the content was valuable enough to be there, it doesn't matter if a meeting was 10 minutes or 10 hours. If it was on point, on purpose, like great. The thing is most meetings, I shouldn't say most, many meetings are used to transmit information, even though group conversation is probably the slowest form to transmit information, right? it's the reason that Amazon executives meet for a half hour in silence beforehand, just reading an executive summary before having a really well-informed conversation about whatever it is they're talking about. And so here with content, I'm thinking about how do I design my content for contribution, not just consumption. And so you think about report outs. That format is pretty designed for consumption for most people, except for one person at a time. And so there's some methods to kind of mix that up. And then last but not least, and oh my goodness, I'll stop talking because this is becoming a rant, not a conversation, is closing. And I got this one from a woman who was about the same height I was when I saw Patch Adams, but she was 80 something, all white hair. And she introduced herself to me as a professional storyteller. And what she said really struck me. I asked her what her number one tip for telling really phenomenal stories was. And she said, all you got to do is know the first sentence that you're going to say and the last sentence that you're going to say. And the best practice for meetings for me related to that is know the first thing you're going to do to engage people and the last thing you're going to do, because most meetings end in a rush trying to schedule the next one, as opposed to saying like, and so I've got a little Google Home on my desk. And I literally, before I'm leading a workshop or hosting a meeting, I will set an alarm for 5 or 10 minutes before the hard stop for us to actually do a really deliberate, peaceful, not stressful, intentional closing. And there's a couple exercises that I do. And sometimes that's actually just a time buffer to say, hey, it's time.
We're done. Right.
So yeah, those are a very quick overview of 5 ingredients that I found that even if you pick out 1 or 2 of those concepts and use them, engagement and connection will go up in your meetings. And if it doesn't, you can, I don't know, write me an angry email or something.
So someone had a question for your unofficial starts. Do you send an invite or do you add time to your meeting?
Yeah. So every good facilitator's answer is it depends. It does actually. Is it an intact team? Is it a brand new group? One of the things that I do personally as an unofficial start here is actually I need to like scroll way over here. I will often send a video to a group. If it's a newer group that I'm meeting with, I'll actually send a video with some expectations. And so tomorrow I'm leading a workshop for 100 faculty at a university to ramp up their teaching style and ability to make it more engaging. And so I pre-recorded and sent them a video. Here's what to expect. If you want to log in a few minutes early, I'll be there. Now, if the group norm and the culture of an intact team is everyone just always shows up right at the exact minute and there isn't any of that unofficial start, you have 2 options. One, you could, well, I'm sure you have many more than 2, but you could send out an invite and let people know and actually build it into the culture of, hey, for 1 or 2 weeks, we're going to try jumping into meetings a few minutes early and test out these unofficial starts. I wouldn't make it a permanent cultural element. Make it an experiment. See how it goes for 2 weeks. And if you like it, continue it. If you don't, ditch it. And then the other option is that you break my rule a little bit and make the unofficial start the official start. So you actually just at 9 a.m. at the beginning, you just start with that question right away and then let that go for about 3 minutes or so until you officially say, all right, here's what we're here for. Here's our intention. Let's get into it.
All right. So I have so many things I'm curious about, but I have another question that I want to ask so that we cover some more topics and then we'll come back. Okay. And I know that you do a not weekly, but a daily video on YouTube that if anyone wants to go watch, and I'm sure you have all of these things that we're talking about, there's more information on your YouTube channel.
Yeah. Right? So there's
I can't hear you.
You can hear me now. I muted myself. So there's a whole heap of videos. So daily, every single video that I put out is it verbatim a question that someone has actually asked me or searched. So it's a long tail search keyword or literally something that somebody has asked me before. So there's a whole lot of stuff there. Yeah, for sure. Breaking down.
All right. So let's talk about strategies for engaging a virtual team. And again, remember that for the most part, the folks that we work with and that might be watching this, they're used to engaging their folks because they were all in the same building together. And now that they're not, they miss that rapport, they miss that. So what are some tips that you can give for engaging a remote team?
Yeah, I love it. So they would probably fall under one of these buckets. So they miss what I heard you just say is they miss the in-person banter back and forth, etc. And so for me, the unofficial start and this idea of connection before content has the potential to replace that. You just do have to build it in. And so it doesn't have to take long, but so let me give you one example of connection before content. I'll give you an example that takes like a minute, and then I'll give you a deeper example that's a little bit more impactful that takes a little bit longer though, which means you have to carve out a bit more time in your meetings. The thing is with the idea of connection before content, what I've found with people when they build it into culture at some aspect, and this is, when I say connection before content, I should define this because it is not chit chat beforehand. That's right. Connection. That's fine. That's nice, right? But connection before content is saying, hey, we're meeting virtually. We've lost the organic time. So to make up for it, we actually have to be very intentional and add a little bit more structure than we normally would so that we can accelerate the cadence of connection. Because if we don't, right, we're never going to get anything done, or we're never going to connect. One or the two is going to happen. And so the connection before content is, let's condense it into this period. And for me, it usually is between 5 and 12 minutes. Over the long run, that ends up saving a group a lot of time because it creates a ton of communication shortcuts. Yes. It connects the group. There's a heap of benefits on the back end of doing that, in addition to it just being valuable for the actual meeting. So the 1 minute version, though, the quick version, if I had to do connection before content, I've got a really busy group. There are a bunch of senior executives. They feel like they're running around. They don't have much time, whatever. I'm teaching them sentence completions. And literally what that is, as the host or the facilitator of the meeting, I might write or come with a prompt like, right now I'm wondering about blank, or what's taking up most of my brain space right now is blank. Have people fill that in the chat if they want to really quickly. And then I like seeing the chat just as an addendum to a live conversation. Whereas typically we use it as this separate thing of like, type in the chat, we might interact with it a little bit, but rarely do we like deeply bring it into the actual conversation. And so I love getting a ton of data out right up front in the chat, and then letting people turn that data into the connection and conversation that happens live. And my simple prompt for that is, so if you did a sentence completion, my simple prompt or invite would be, go into the chat, scroll through, find something that you're naturally curious about, unmute, and ask that person a question.
Oh, I like that.
Right. So that simple little guidance makes it adds, for some people, it might be a slightly uncomfortable level of structure to organic connection, but it makes it way more meaningful because you're actually rooting.
But it only take us a couple of times of that happening before the ice is probably broken, and the uncomfortableness, the awkwardness maybe of that melts away.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, none of my like the first 5 minutes of any of my meetings or sessions or workshops are like full out engagement, as if we started out going 100 miles an hour, as opposed to like, hey, how's it going? Hey, what's up? Because every time someone says, hey, how's it going? They may not. You can be curious about it, but they likely are not curious about it because there's about a question set of about 4 or 5 questions that we almost always ask, or 4 or 5 things that we almost always say at the beginning of meetings. And if you want to just remain status quo and move really slowly, then keep doing those questions. But if you want to like jump into it, and for when I ask a group, how many of you really love small talk that has no purpose whatsoever, like not a lot of hands go up. But when I ask like, how many of you love conversations that matter, that really get to the heart and cut past things, like 98% of hands go up. And right. So for me, a method like this just bridges the gap so that we can have conversations that we want to have, not ones that we just typically do because it's normal.
So when I was on your YouTube site, I think I saw something about virtual team building. I think so. Give us some examples of virtual team building.
Yeah. So typical in-person team building has kind of become this term of like, or has been almost synonymous with like a company offsite where you like take a day and you go build your team. And that's not necessarily a bad thing to do. It might give introverts some hives, but it's not necessarily a bad thing to do. And if I wanted to lose 10 pounds, which I wouldn't mind, if I wanted to lose 10 pounds, I'm not going to go to the gym on Monday for 12 hours. Right. I'm going to go on Monday, Wednesday, Friday, and then maybe take a long run on Saturday. And I'm going to do that for about 20 minutes to 40 minutes each of those days. That is the same logic or philosophy that I would apply to virtual team building is don't feel the need to block off 3 hours to do something really fun to build the team. You can do that. And actually, there are some experiences that you can dive into that are really fun that I would probably like invite you to go check out a place like the Go Game or something like that. Really affordable solutions for teams to like go have fun, play, whatever. For me, I think about team building, bring up those words. I'm thinking about actually building up your team so that you're stronger, you're better communicators, you understand each other better, you're creating shortcuts, you're working out conflicts before they become combat, like all of that stuff. And so for me, because that's my aim in team building, I'm using unofficial starts and connection before content as a tool to actually build my team sustainably over time rather than just all in mass at one point.
Yeah. No, I like that. So I want to go back, and I know we're at typically the time that we're at, so I'm not going to go much further, but I do have one more question. Context hook. I think that's one of those that I have a feeling is really, really important and could be one that gets glazed over if it could be not done correctly easily.
Yes. Yeah.
Help us out.
Yeah. Super helpful. Okay. So in fact, I'll put myself on the chopping block because I don't know that I did a really good job of a context hook, even in the beginning of our time. Maybe you could say that I did by coming out like right out the gate, and instead of just, giving history of we and me or context or anything like that, I just said like, hey, here's something valuable. Chat while I'm chatting. Right. So one way to do a context hook is to front stack value, to like answer some people's questions, address some people's problems, rather than like doing it after 5 to 10 minutes of intro or something. All of that said, in a short amount of time, the best way that I would teach you all how to make a really great context hook is by unpacking this word intention. So intention, the Latin root of the word intention actually means to stretch. And so I think about intention like a rubber band or an elastic that stretches over the needs of everyone in the group and pulls people together. So typically a context hook, we might by default say, this is what we're going to talk about today. This is what we're going to do. This is what we want to accomplish, whatever. All that's fine. Those are objectives, not intentions. And so sharing, so I'll give you an example and then I'll unpack a little bit deeper. So I was leading a workshop for 80 senior executives in a big company. Busy people. I knew they were like kind of on the fence about whether they wanted to be there or not. It was a part of this leadership retreat and they had a lot to do. And so I knew I needed one sentence in the beginning to say, this is why this is valuable for you. And this was about 6 months ago or so. And so we're like really all virtual with COVID and they're really in that place. And so what I said, I looked into the camera and I said, my intention in our time together today is to be a painkiller for the next 100+ hours of virtual meetings that you will be in, probably just next month or probably even in the next 2 weeks. And so even if you're a curmudgeon-y person that doesn't want to be in this meeting or this session right now, you're at the very least like, right? Like, yeah, I am. Right. I feel exhausted at the end of the day. Like I feel Zoom fatigue. It's real for me. And so maybe, just maybe, I could pick out 1, 2, 3 tips or ideas that might be able to alleviate some of that pain. And so taking that a little bit further, turning that into an experience, I also asked, before I said that, I asked people in the meeting to share some of their pain in the chat. And so I was able to say like, yeah, getting tired of the day. Yeah, presenting to a bunch of black boxes in gallery view. Yeah, right. So able to acknowledge all this pain and then say, my intention is to be a painkiller for the next 100+ hours of virtual meetings that we're going to have. Now, the reason I would say this is so powerful as a leader in general is rarely do we slow down enough as people to have intentions. And so we like just do things. We're just driven by activity and reacting to the red notification bubbles on our devices. And so when we do pause long enough to get really clear about what our intention is, sometimes it doesn't include the needs of others. So actually like, no, what does everybody else in this meeting actually want or need? And can my sentence encompass that? And then the tool is actually sharing it with the group, because even when we do have intentions that affect other people, rarely do we share them. And when we don't, I would actually say that is manipulation. When we have intentions that affect other people and we don't clue them into them, we're trying to push or cajole them to get them to do something that we aren't necessarily willing to share out loud. So that's the heart of it for me, of why that is so important right at the beginning.
I think what you just said makes a lot of sense to me. And I see that too, when leaders or managers, they have really clear ideas on what they want to accomplish during a meeting that they're going to have, but they haven't taken the time to share their intention. I would have never framed it that way, but you're exactly right. If they don't take the time to share their intention and share not only why they're doing it, but taking the needs of the others, you do feel manipulated, or you feel like I don't really matter here, right? I mean, this training, yeah.
That example, Matt, is perfect. So let's take that. Somebody you've got a ton of stuff to accomplish. You've got those objectives. A very simple way to maybe reframe that. So say you're like rolling out a strategic plan or something to a group. You might say to the group, my intention in this meeting is to share things that actually in the long haul will make your job easier and maybe a little bit more fueling. And then you can get into the nitty gritty if that's true. Obviously,
that's true, right?
Yeah. And you might acknowledge, what I'm going to share with you may make things more challenging for 1 to 3 months, but assuming that you plan to work here for more than 1 to 3 months, things are going to get a whole lot easier at the end, right? So like paint that a little bit of that picture. What's in it for me, not just what do I have to do or what do we need to accomplish necessarily.
I love that. That's great. All right. We're going to cut it there, because here's the thing, Chad, you and I could probably talk about this stuff. We could we could set a record. Like we could go all day talking about this stuff. But here's what I want to let everyone know. Chad, first, thank you so much for taking your time to spend it with us today. We appreciate it. Also, if you want to get a hold of Chad, we have his information, his LinkedIn, his Twitter, and Shay will put that up on the screen. You can certainly get a hold of him that way. But the very best way to interact with Chad would be to get on his YouTube channel and check it out. And I did. I watched a bunch of the YouTubes in preparing for this. I watched a bunch of their videos. Not only are they informative, but they're also really, really well done. I have YouTube envy. I have video envy on the way you put your YouTubes together. So I love that. Again, thanks so much. And thank you everyone for joining us. We really appreciate it. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and share this YouTube channel. We appreciate it. We're on a quest to get more and more subscribers. And we'll be back next week with another Improving Sales Performance livecast. See you guys later.
Thanks, Matt.